Okay, let's go ahead and recap what we've talked about earlier this week. There's been several rules thrown at you, and so I wanted you to have one video to come back to that would recap all of that together. So the first rule that we're going to recap is what we discussed on Tuesday with those triangle examples. And so this is talking about whether or not you can form a triangle given certain side lengths. Okay, so to form a triangle, the sum of the two shorter side lengths, so that's the really important part of the two shorter, I know that line's a little funky, but the sum of the two shorter sides must be greater than the longer side. Now it's hard to understand that with these rules, so I'm going to give you some variables first, then I will give you some number examples. So what we're saying is if A and B are the two shorter sides, right, the smaller numbers, if we add those together and they're bigger than C, meaning that C is the longer side, then it will make a triangle. Let's look at two examples because I know when you see all the words and the letters, it's hard to understand. I totally get it. So remember, we had those 4 examples you were supposed to think about, and then I went over them with you in the video. Here was one of them. So the two shorter sides in this case were 2 and 8. They will not always be the first two numbers they give you, by the way. It could be in any order, but 2 and 8 were less than 12. So that's why we added those two together, because it's always the shorter two sides that we start with. When we added those together, those only equal 10, which is not greater, so it is not greater than 12. So no, these 3 sides did not make a triangle. Okay, so no. But then we had another example where we had, so 10 and 18, see how they're not necessarily the first two, so 10 and 18 were the shorter side lengths, right? Because those are both smaller than 25. When we add those together, we get 28. And since that is greater than 25, it is going to make a triangle. So that's what this rule was saying, right? You take the two shorter sides, you add them together. If they're greater than the third side length, it will make a triangle. If they are not greater, so the same or less, then it will not make a triangle. That's what this rule is talking about. That's what we discussed on Tuesday. Now, I know that Khan Academy video, the second one from yesterday, was a lot, so that's why I'm going to recap it for you here. So here is an example that we're going to talk through to help explain what he was saying in that video. So he was talking about that if you widened a triangle or made it as narrow as possible, you would basically get the range of what the third side length could be. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ways to remember that because I know that's a lot of information, and so I want to give you a quick, easy trick to use. So let's say we have a triangle with 2 side lengths. One side is 10, one side is 3, and we are trying to figure out, well, what are the possible side lengths of the third side? Because we've talked about how some side lengths will allow you to make a triangle and some won't. So we want to know, well, what are the possibilities that could make it? So I want you to give you some tricks on how we could solve this problem, okay? So just follow along. If you want to write notes down, you're more than welcome to, but you can always come back to this video. So before I move on to this part, I want to show you what this all means. So we're going to come up with our range for what those side lengths could be, right? There's going to be a smallest number, which is going to go here, and then a biggest possibility here. So we're looking for our range. So this is saying X, that third side, has to be between these two numbers. So we're just using our greater than or less than symbols here. So we're saying it's going to have to be bigger than this number, which is going to be our minimum, and it has to be smaller than this number, which is our maximum. That's all that this phrase is saying, okay? So we're going to find the minimum, the maximum. So here's a real easy way that you can find the minimum and maximum. These are our 2 side lengths that they give us. In order to find the third side lengths, what the possibilities are, for the minimum, you're going to subtract the side lengths to get the minimum, okay? The reason we are subtracting is because we're trying to figure out if I made that as small as possible, right? Where it didn't make a triangle, right? I smooshed them together. Like, remember how he was drawing it and he was pushing the line in to meet up with the other line, and we were making this smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And the line kept going closer and closer. So if I subtract those, that's what's going to give me, like, what would it be the same if it created this exact same line, right? So like if this was 3 and this was 10, and I kept moving this in so the degrees was 0, so the 3 would hit, like here, let's say, I was trying to figure out, okay, well, what would the rest of it be? That's going to be your minimum of what would make that straight line. And so we know X would have to be a little bigger than that in order to make a triangle. Even if that triangle is super narrow, something like that, okay, we still need to know what that number would be. So to do that, all you have to do is take the two sides they give you. In this case, it's 10 and 3, and we're going to subtract them to figure out what's the minimum number we have to make sure we're bigger than. And so 10 minus 3 gives us 7. So we know that this side length, this third side length, has to be at least a little bit, even if it was just 7.1. It'd be a super narrow triangle, but it would work. So it has to have a minimum of 7. Okay, so that's as small as we could go. Well, we have to be a little bigger than that, but that's our minimum. And then to find the maximum, you would add the 2, right? So this is like what we were doing before of can we even make a triangle? So this is where you would add them. So you got 10, and I know I'm getting a little funky here. Hold on, sorry. 1 second. So I've got 10 plus 3 now to see, okay, well, can we even make a triangle? And so that's going to give us 13. Okay, and so we know that it's going to have to be, okay, so again, that range is going to be 13 for the maximum. Okay, now I know you might be having trouble with this, and that is totally fine. We will keep practicing, and keep going through it. This is just so you're exposed to this and just so that you can see it. And so this range, if you're struggling with the bigger idea, you can always sketch them out to try and see it, but this is a trick to help you. So if you just fall back on this trick, it will help you with this, with that idea he was talking about. And you're more than welcome to go back to the second Khan Academy video to look through this too. But what I want you to do is go back to the e-learning link page, and there is a link to our Flipgrid. It's our second topic that's there. And all I want you to do is just tell me, how are you doing with all this information so far? What are you understanding? What are you not understanding? What do you maybe have questions on? Can you maybe give me an example of something you have a question on? Anything like that. And I will respond back to you to help you. So this is just a quick way for us to check in and see with a video, just so we can talk through it a little bit better. How are you doing so far? So good luck. You've got this. Make sure you go post that on Flipgrid.